You're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. It's more fun to believe. Third year bonus.
I mean, how about that? Some songs are classics. It's the third year bonus theme song, written and composed by the wonderful Alex Stein. Is that a classic? I would say that in the world of podcasting, it's a classic. Hat tip to you, Alex Stein, my buddy, my pal. Hope he's doing well. Love that third year bonus intro. God, am I filled with joy and light right now and positivity? You bet your sweet tush I am. I just got back from the gymnasium, the fitness planet, and I got to tell you, a little exercise goes a long way into lifting the spirits, clearing out the cobwebs, and boy, oh boy, I said, after I said, you bet your sweet tush, I am America's favorite grandpa uncle. So I'm reading from Quest, Journal of the Theosophical Society in America, Summer 2024 edition. If you are a member of the Theosophical Society, which, hey, if you're into that kind of thing, I recommend it. Go for it. Just go to their website and, write a check or whatever it is. I think they still have to kind of like, you can probably use a credit card. Maybe you have to write a check. I don't know. Anyway, these magazines are, quarterly magazines are incredible. The artwork is always, it is philosophy inspired artwork. For example, the artwork on the cover of this is Shambhala by Melchior Lecter, oil on canvas from 1925, a painting. Who was a German artist best known for his work in the decorative design of books and ex libris book plates, stained glass windows, and painting. With occult interests included his membership in the George Circle, an influential group of followers of poet Stefan George, in which there was something of the aura of the Grail Knights or Templars and something of the Rosicrucian Brotherhood. That's a quote about. Anyway, I don't know much about that stuff. So, hey, hold the phone if that gets into murky territory. I doubt it would, because the Theosophical Society, which I am a member, is great. So, and this artwork is pretty damn cool. So, why am I so giggly and googly? Goosey and giggly. I think I meant to say goosey. My name's Ryan Singer, by the way. This is Me and Paranormal You. This is a solo episode. I appreciate you listening. If you know me, you know I love the Imaginal realm, and I love talking about it, and I love my buddy Noah Lampert, and we're going to get Noah back on the show, and we're going to talk about who knows what we're going to talk about. He's probably been on the program. He's definitely on the Mount Rushmore. I don't want to say who's on the Mount Rushmore right now because I'll forget people. But if we're talking about frequent guests who have been on the program a bunch of times, been on the show a bunch of times, obviously there's some names that obviously pop out, like Karen Rontowski, Jim Perry, Noah is one of those people. There's been, there's lots of people who come on this show on a regular basis, and I love them for it. Because you might not be aware of this, but the only thing I pay them in is in friendship and conversation. Why did I take my glasses off? I was getting ready to read something, and you know me, I need my glasses nowadays. Okay, so I open this up, and there's an article. There's a great article in this one, in this edition. It's called Henry Corbin's Discovery of the Imaginal Realm and Sufism, and it's a pretty, it's the titled article, and it's. Let me give some credit to the writer, Rasul Sorkabi. Is who wrote this, and God, I'd love to go to the gathering, and it just happened, and I wasn't able to do it out in Illinois. One of these days, I'm gonna have the money and the time to go do that. So Anyway, this is a very interesting article written about Henry Corbin, who was a philosopher and who admittedly was not aware of. And I've had lots of things I need to get to today on the program. I hope I can remember them because I've had conversations with some friends of mine about some kind of like weird technology. It's like technology-based telepathy, and then just today, my other buddy DNA, really funny comedian out in the Santa Cruz area, and also has lived a life, I'll tell you. And we're in talks about. I pitched him an idea. He's on board with it. I just have to get off my tush, and I got to make it happen. And as a limited, like a mini series podcast event that I want to do with DNA, because he's had this incredible life as a reporter. He spent time with Timothy Leary in the past. He's got recordings of him interviewing Dr. Stephen Greer from years ago. I mean, this is a life lived, and I need to get DNA on the mics. Even if it's not for this other thing, I just need to get him on the mics. So I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to request with great urgency that DNA join me on the program. God, we had so much fun up in Santa Cruz a couple months ago. But I want to read just an excerpt from this article, and which is kind of a biographical piece. I feel like a sneeze is coming on. I wasn't wrong. There was only one, though. And I think it's my brother who always says sneezes come in twos. And if it's only been one, just wait for it. Don't get too cocky because it's coming down. It's coming. Right now, it looks like it was a solo sneeze, that might be the most paranormal thing that's happened to me today. A solo sneeze. Let me read this excerpt from this article. Again, this is from Quest, the Journal of the Theosophical Society in America, summer 2024 edition. God, I love this thing. I love this painting on the front. This is just a tiny excerpt, okay? This is from page 29. The imaginal realm is the bridge between the physical body and the higher realms. Therefore, it is neither physical nor purely spiritual. It is both tangible and abstract. It is imaginal, an image sourced in the beyond and yet perceptible here. To describe the imaginal, Surawardi, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, uses the analogy of steam, which is neither water nor fire, yet has qualities of both in itself. In fact, the Sufi term mithal, translated as imaginal, actually refers to an image that exemplifies or symbolizes an ideal model. But this ideal model is different from Plato's universal ideas, which are fixed, perfect models of physical objects. The imaginal realm consists of ideas or images in suspension, parenthetically, suwar mu alaqua. They are similar to images on the mirror, reflected and visible and yet not existing on the mirror. These images incarnate in the physical realm through our creative or active imagination. Khayal Fayal. I apologize for the butchering of the pronunciation of I believe it's Arabic that I am not schooled at all in and have had very little exposure to as a Catholic white boy who grew up in Southern Ohio. Just a little bit more, and let's hope I don't butcher it. Creative imagination in Surawardi's teachings involves a journey from the sunset on the west toward the sunrise on the east. Here, the words west and east should not be considered as geopolitical divisions. Excuse me, I had a burp. They indicate that in every location and in every body, there is the darkness of sunset as well as the light of sunrise. The adventure of a mystical philosopher is essentially seen as a voyage which progresses toward the light. Henry Corbin wrote that, or that's from a book from Corbin that was published posthumously by his wife, who lived 33 years or 28 years after his death, and he died at 75. So either was a May December romance, or she just lived to be 100, and hell yeah, I love that for her. That's all I'm going to read from this. Oh gosh, there's so much good stuff. I just recommend, joining and getting it. The TSA only exists today because of the generosity of those who have come before. So, there's also a journal called Gnosis, a journal of the Western Inner Traditions. Jay Kinney was the founder of that. Jay Kinney is a contributor to this, I believe, as well. This edition, not that article that I just wrote. Again, let me give some credit to the person who wrote that, Rasul Sourkabi, or Sourkabi. I hope I'm pronouncing their name not too far off from what it actually is as well, but some great research and a fascinating biographical insight. It's just a snippet, like a window into Corbin's life. Rasul is a PhD, has a PhD as a professor at the University of Utah. He has lived and studied in Iran, India, Japan, and the U.S. This is the 6th time he's contributed to Quest. And his wife actually made some pretty incredible paintings. Setsuko Yoshida contributed some pretty beautiful artwork to the article itself. Anyway, so that's something that was on my mind. DNA sent me a link. My buddy DNA sent me a link to something about a patent for artificial telepathy. As we were texting, having a conversation about Dr. Stephen Greer, and a conversation he was having with a ghost hunter professor friend of his who is on the other side of the Dr. Stephen Greer argument. And you know me, I'm pro Dr. Stephen Greer. And now let's be clear. I don't know Dr. Greer. I've never spoken with Dr. Greer. I am a proponent of love over fear. That's just how I live my life. I mean, if you wanted to get into it, you could say I live that way, or I choose to view the world that way politically. I think you can make your own assumptions from that statement of where I am. And I've also railed against capitalism enough on this program over the years. I think you understand where I stand on that. So love over fear in most things. That's not to say that I'm not controlled by fear sometimes. I overthink things. I become crippled with anxiety. I panic. I freak out. I have to pop a bunch of magnesium on certain days. The last few days I've been heavy on the magnesium. Just a generalized anxiety has kind of overcome me. I have to make sure I get a lot of exercise in, and I'm being creative and doing creative work when that happens. And that reinforces a sense of worth. And, let's not forget trying to get some meditation in through the Expand app from the Monroe Institute. Now, there's all kinds of different ways to try to, get rid of that. But the point is this. I try to live with love over fear, and I let love, even though it's scary. It is scary, because when you try to live through love, you are vulnerable. And I had my friend tell me that I was scared of love. And I got to tell you that when someone says something like that to you, it hurts. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it makes you. It's a good thought experiment, actually. It's a good exercise in thinking, and it's a great workout in self-reflection of the mental kind. When you can go through your life and you can make these choices and these decisions, and most of the time you can figure out, okay, did I choose this because I was leading with love or leading with fear? And now, this is not an excuse to be reckless financially necessarily. Like, Well, I'm scared I won't be able to pay my rent, so I shouldn't buy these baseball cards. That's fear. I should buy these baseball cards because I love baseball cards. Now, I'm not going to act like I didn't just do that. Within the last week or so, will I be able to pay my rent? You bet your sweet tush I will. But I still got the baseball cards. Now, will I be able to spend money on anything else for the rest of my life? I don't know. But I'm not going to live with fear in that way. So, but it's not an excuse to be reckless. Okay. So I do my darndest, right? That doesn't mean that doesn't mean I'm acing the test in all the myriad of categories in my life in which I try to apply this across the board. It doesn't mean I'm doing a good job. I'd love to try to do a good job, and I certainly do. But Stephen Greer, to the point of what I'm rambling about, with the C5 protocols and the Disclosure Project, is adamant and sending out the message repeatedly that this is not a national security issue. This is not something to be afraid of. Now, there are people who are like, well, you do the C5 protocols and you make yourself a target. Now you opened yourself up and now you're a target. Do you want to live that way? Now, is it naivete when you say, I'm just going to do this because I believe in leading my life with love? And now next thing you know, you're taken over by aliens and all that kind of stuff. Well, are you going to live? Am I going to live my life that way? Am I going to stop exploring? Am I going to, halt the journey that I've been on? Because quite frankly, it's been one hell of a journey. And I don't know where it leads, quite frankly. Great conversation this afternoon with my therapist. And Brian had some insight into my life that was rattling, quite frankly. I recommend having a therapist if your insurance covers it or you can afford it, because sometimes they can just crystallize things back to you. They can just mirror the thing you have said to you, but in a much more concise. You're not going to believe this, but sometimes I can be wordy. And I know, right? Who would have thought that I could be, okay, I'll stop. So he said something that was very, very, very interesting to me. And it will, in fact, I am planning on it anyway, shape the future of my life in the somewhat near future in a pretty significant way. And I'm excited about that. We have to make choices. And do you have to make a choice? I don't know. I suppose you do. All day long, you're making choices. Do I go left or do I go right? Do I eat or do I sleep? Or these kinds of things. So yeah, we do have to make choices. But that's not a new concept, Ryan. But nonetheless, some choices greatly impact our lives. I don't, like when I say I have no idea what the future holds, I truly mean that. I'm trying to be open to the universe. I am trying to let the universe show me the path, the direction. It's probably no secret to you, if you're listening to this show, that paranormal investigations, paranormal filmmaking has slowly but surely been swallowing larger parts of my life, specifically parts of my life that used to be completely dominated by stand-up comedy. Now, I don't make money doing paranormal stuff. So that is the rub. You know what I mean? So the rub here is, okay, so I'm spending more and more time doing all this paranormal stuff, and I'm spending less time doing the thing that has kept me alive for the last 15 years. So where does that put you? Well, I will tell you this. It puts you in a position where you're not buying a house anytime soon, even in Florence, Alabama, where they're $100,000. But it does put you in a position where you've been following your bliss, right? Your joy stations, as Joseph Campbell would say. Now, so where does that lead me in the future? Well, as soon as I'm finished with the Fitz documentary, Friends in the Sky, editing that, I'm at I heard someone say this the other day and I liked it. And I said it to Brian, my therapist, today. And he goes, oh, well, that was a fancy word. And I was quite impressed with myself, as you might imagine. I said, but then as soon as I'm finished editing this documentary, I feel like I'll be at an inflection point in my life. And then I have to decide which direction will I be going once I reach this inflection point. Oh, I think I know what direction that is. And maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about that when I get back. Or maybe we're going to do a random book draw. If my buddy Mario is listening, I know he's going to love this. On the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, written by James T. Lukatsky and Colm Kelleher, along with George Knapp. About disclosure. Since we're talking about Stephen Greer, maybe we'll peek into Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Although I haven't finished the book, so maybe we shouldn't do a book drawing. You know, we'll see how we're feeling. We'll be right back after this short break. Patrons, patreon.com/Ryan Singer. No commercials at $3 a month on any of the episodes. And maybe this one will be free to everybody. We'll see. We'll be right back. Thank you so much to all the patrons. You can join for free. People are doing it. You should do it too. It's free. You could be a free patron, or you could give me money. Either way, I like that. Oh, and we're coming back in. We're coming back in on the downslope of the tones. Again, composed and recorded by Alex Stein. Classic podcast soundage. I'm going to do a random book draw right now from The Trickster and the Paranormal, written by George P. Hansen, because I got to tell you, on the last 30-year bonus, or whenever it was, 2 weeks ago, I can't remember if it was the last one, I just randomly decided to read, or I think we did this from the Book of Symbols, which I have here with me as well. I knew when I was traveling away from home, there was like 4 books I knew I had to take. And I didn't know why, but I knew I had to. And these are 2 of them. Well, you know, Skinwalkers is one, Trickster is one, and Symbols is another one. But anyway, and it was magic the way it worked out on that one. So I believe that we're going to find something. I'm going to do a random book draw here into The Trickster and the Paranormal. We're talking about just to be clear, we were talking about the imaginal world, just for very briefly. We're talking about, you know, ETs, you know, UAPs, UFOs, whatever, you know, and CE5, which is, you know, close encounters of the 5th kind, you know, intentional contact with extraterrestrials or intelligence from outside of Earth that's human initiated specifically. So let's see here. Front or back, we could do retrocausality here. I want someone to think out loud. You said back? Okay. Open it up to the back. So that's the index. Maybe actually I did hear front the first time. So I'm going to go front. Oh, I need my glasses again. Oh my gosh. So I opened up. I'm saying, oh my gosh, before I know what it is. I open up right to the beginning of chapter 3, which is Ernest Hartman's mental boundaries. There's a part that is actually highlighted from a previous read. And let's just read what is highlighted here, because that's sticking out to me in yellow highlighter. That's classic me using a yellow highlighter. One was labeled Percepience/clairvoyance, which included questions about psychic experiences. People who scored high on that factor tended to have thin boundaries. Thus, the connection between thin boundaries and the paranormal is well supported. Thin boundary personality characteristics have much in common with those found in psychological interpretations of the Greek trickster, Hermes, who is also a god of boundaries. Jean Shinoda Bolin is one of the most accessible writers on Hermes. She is Japanese-American, a professor of psychiatry at the University of California, San Francisco, and is familiar with parapsychology. Excuse me. In the 1970s, she wrote for Psychic magazine, which her husband edited and published. Her interest in psychic matters is further seen in her book, The Tao of Psychology, published 1979, which is subtitled Synchronicity in the Self. Hermes' characteristics were discussed in the previous chapter, and I will not cover them in detail here. Instead, I have summarized them in Table 1 along with a description of thin boundary types. That's interesting, this idea of thin boundaries. Let's look at some thin boundaries involve easy merging into fantasy or vivid memory, at times not being quite clear what state one is in. Now, does this sound like the imaginal realm? I don't think I got into the 4 different realms in Sufism, which is different than, and there is a distinction here. I want to be very clear from what I read, from the context of what I read. I am led to believe, and I do believe, that there is a distinction in the word used for realm in Sufism when talking about the 4 realms and the imaginal realm being one of them, which is much different than the physical world. So it's not like a multi-world thing. It is a different realm. We can kind of take what we heard previously about the steam, right? It's not fire nor water. It is not a physical realm, okay? So, or a physical world, excuse me. It is a realm, which there is to be a distinction, as there are 2 separate words for world and realm in those writings. So this sounds like, we're talking about thin boundaries, which is exciting because when we're talking about different realms, we're talking about a realm or traversing through realms. Boundaries are, part of this, I suppose, right? When every realm has a boundary, every world has a boundary. Followed over time, the people with thin boundaries appeared to have intense but often short-lived relationships. Oh, that's interesting. Or are we just talking about me being afraid of love or something? That's like, we're not going to get too personal on this. That's not what this show's about. So, okay, let's see here. Now, this is, oh, gosh. These are concepts about Hermes' characteristics were discussed in the previous chapter. I will not cover them in detail. He says, I have summarized them in Table 1 along with descriptors of thin boundary types. So these are, these are tied into Hermes here. He finds new grass always greener, which invites him to flit from one situation or person to another. He is more likely to have tried, or at least okay, so I'm not reading ahead here. I'm laughing because this is talking about sex all of a sudden. I didn't think we were going to be getting into sex. He's more likely to have tried or at least fantasized sex with a man or men if he is heterosexual, or with women if he is homosexual, than any other type of man. I have felt the saving presence of Hermes when my adult patients have spoken of their abusive childhoods. A Hermes man is not likely to be a narrow specialist or a happy cog in a large corporation. The person with thin boundaries. So these are 2 different people, two different psychiatrists writing about 2 different, about the same thing separately from one another. One's talking about thin boundaries. One's talking about Hermes. The Hermes boy can move from reality to imagination readily, not examining the boundaries. So that ties into the first thing about the thin boundaries involve easy merging into fantasy or vivid memory, at times not being quite clear what state one is in. Now, to be clear, I don't think this is a man, woman, this isn't a gender-based situation for me when it comes to Hermes. The person with thin boundaries will often be seen as a bit unreliable. Now, the counterpart from Bolin is Hermes can be unreliable and inconsistent. Those with thin boundaries are often drawn to occupations that do not require strict schedules. and detailed organization. The Hermes person does not like schedules. That's the counterpart to it, or the companion. Um, the Hermes archetype provides qualities that contribute to being a good psychotherapist. And then the counterpart to that is people with thin boundaries are, counselors and therapists also scored quite thin. Wow, I mean, a lot of this is resonating with me. Am I a Hermes? I'm a Hermes type. Um, let's see here. What else is there? Finds new grass always greener. Okay, yeah, we already talked about that. That's interesting. I mean, pretty much all of these, right? Are you a Hermes type? Are you a thin boundary type person? I mean, I think, I don't know, right? It's that whole like sexual preference stuff to me is, it's wild how important some people find it to be in the defining of a person, outside of oneself. And now, if you're a person who wants to put a large emphasis on the definition for your own life regarding your sexual orientation, or at least your predominant sexual orientation, because I do believe, like it says here in the Hermes type, I mean, no one's ever like those, what is it? There's the movie, I've talked about this before. It's I think Liam Neeson is I can't remember the Kinsey scale of sexuality. How it's like a spectrum essentially, from heterosexuality to homosexuality. And so I don't think any of them are bad, right? No matter where you fall. Even if you're one of these people who's like, I have never had a heterosexual thought in my life. And the other person's like, I've never had a homosexual thought in my life. Well, I mean, wow. I mean, talk about being, just pure there, right? Just 100% locked in. Wouldn't it be nice to just know anything in life 100%? Just anything in general, let alone that. I mean, just to know anything. Like, am I hungry? I'm about 93% sure I'm hungry. I'm about 7% like, am I just sad and want food? Do you know what I mean? Like, people are like, you always know when you're hungry. Oh, do you? Or are you hungry, or are you trying to satiate something else? Right? So yeah, that's interesting. That's wild. I originally opened up to the back of the book, and oh my God, I just opened up to another random page. Here's the title, the first thing that caught my eye, and we're going in. The Religious Imagination and Personification. This is literally 300 plus pages later. Gods and supernatural beings. This is from page 399. The chapter is called The Imagination. This is crazy. This is great. I'm loving this. I hope you're finding some enjoyment here. We're on a whimsical path here tonight, this afternoon. Gods and supernatural beings are part of all cultures. They are typically personified, i.e., endowed with human characteristics. But gods are more than mere persons. In monotheistic religions, God is considered a totality. Though it is difficult or impossible to speak of that concept directly. The religious imagination grapples with the problem, and it deserves special comment. It cannot be fully distinguished from social and psychological concepts because they blend into each other. Thin boundaries? Is that what we're referencing here? It is a mistake to try to completely disentangle them. This week's episode, The Inner Tangled Nature of Time, is the title of it, with the wonderful Jim Harold. This is all tying together in a very whimsical way. Emil Durkheim, one of the founders of the sociology of religion, suggested that gods and religious institutions are collective representations of society. Parenthetically, here again we encounter the broad but seminal concept of representation. End of parentheses. In his Elementary Forms of the Religious Life, published in 1912, he went so far as to say that, quote, at bottom, the concept of totality, that of society and that of divinity, are very probably only different aspects of the same notion. Let me read that again, just so I properly understand it. Because again, like I'm saying, I'm not reading ahead here on these random book draws. Quote, at bottom, so I think that's like saying at the end of the day, the concept of totality, that of society and that of divinity, are very probably only different aspects of the same notion. So when it comes to totality of society and of divinity, they're just different concepts of the same notion, different aspects of the same notion. Okay. The gods reflect the values and structure of society, but most people usually do not consciously recognize the implications. It is beneficial for society for them not to. In fact, Massionis comments that, quote, the ability of the sacred to legitimate, let's get this right, the ability of the sacred to legitimate and stabilize society, to legitimize, maybe that's the word that we'd use in the modern times. I don't know how old this is written. The ability of the sacred to legitimate and stabilize society rests on one major condition. The socially constructed character of the sacred must go unrecognized. Wow. In other words, religions must partly obscure its own nature. Now that is interesting, and I'm going to come back to that. The gods are perceived as having a force and will of their own. These collectively shared representations or images are personified, and we need to contemplate the topic of personification. It is an essential aspect of myth. The trickster, for instance, is a personified being. Imagination and personification go together. Oh boy. They need to be understood jointly. Both are poorly regarded by scientists. Both have low status. Hence, most scholars ignore them. Okay, so let's go back here. Oh my God, we're going to rewind because this is blowing my skull open, right? The gods reflect the values and structure of society, but most people usually do not consciously recognize the implications. It is beneficial for society for them not to. Okay, so the quote, the ability of the sacred to legitimate and stabilize society rests on one major condition. The socially constructed character of the sacred must go unrecognized. Now, I think this directly correlates to the world. Oh, I just kind of smooched the microphone. Sorry about that if that was loud. This directly correlates to the world of the paranormal. And it's interesting. Also references the trickster itself being personified. That is something that is obvious, I think, to most of us, right? That it is an energy. We're talking about a phenomenon that's being personified. But I am so in love with the personification of this energy as the trickster. And it changes shapes, and cultures have had, whether it's the coyote, and listen, it is clearly an energy that has been recognized. It is a phenomena that has been accepted as part of the existence of our lives because it is everywhere and it is represented in many forms. Now, this is because, let's be honest, we love it, right? We love the trickster. Now, gosh, I just can't get over this idea. The socially constructed character of the sacred must go unrecognized. The socially constructed structure of the paranormal must go unrecognized for it to be as effective, or maybe, and what do we even mean when we say effective? Do we mean magical, interesting, fascinating, conveying, I don't know, like lessons about life and death, almost as, as parables, as fables, as stories. The trickster is involved. And is the trickster, and listen, like I said, I know it's a personification, but I love this idea that there are tricksters running around in form. I talk about it and I think about trickster energy so damn much that it doesn't even occur to me that it's that I've personified it in many different ways in my mind. It's 100% a personification, yes, but cannot energy manifest into physical form? And gosh, I understand why all the gods exist. I do. I really do. Even if I find it foolish to devote one's entire life to the worship of one of the created gods, right? I still understand why they're there, why it's happened. Gosh, I guess that means we're coming up on another commercial, and I'm on one right now. But we got to pay the bills. Sorry, that's my headphones making a bunch of noise. So just a reminder, I love you patrons. And I love people who are listening who aren't patrons. I'm not playing favorites here. The first live stream event that I'm going to be doing is happening next Tuesday night, August 6th at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you are a $3 patron and above, you get to join Comfort in Community. It's the first one we're doing. It's going to be some story time. I'm going to be telling some information that I'd never tell on the podcast. There's certain things that I can't broadcast publicly, so I'll probably be telling some of that, and then we'll see what other people want to share potentially. So it's going to be great. We're going to be right back after these quick messages. So go sign up. Be a free patron even. And we're back. I am back. You're back, I hope, as well. I hope those commercials weren't too brutal. You can always hit the fast forward button. I don't know how long they last, but that works. So anyway, we're talking about the personification of the trickster, and we're talking about what Massionis has written, that the socially constructed character of the sacred must go unrecognized. In other words, religion must partly obscure its own nature. So in other words, the paranormal must partly obscure its own nature. And why this is to be successful, to have longevity, to be magical, to be, if we peek behind the curtain and we get to see way too much, it goes back to that old quote that, the magic is just science yet defined. But that doesn't mean that if you keep going backwards or into the thing that is scientific, it doesn't retain its magical qualities. Magnetism, regardless of being identified as a scientific thing that is testable, repeatable over and over and over, but actually does magnetism change? No, I'm just kidding. So there is something about something that change anyway, but we're not going to get into that. And the point is, magnetism is scientifically testable and repeatable, and it is something that is real, right? Everyone understands it to be real. I don't think there's an argument about it, although I am surprised that there are arguments about certain things that I didn't think would be argued anymore. I guess flat Earth would be one of those things. Here's the point. So if we get to see too much behind the veil and we understand how everything works, does the magic leave? Does the paranormal, must it obscure itself? I mean, it's really interesting to think about that it might have to obscure part of its own nature. I don't know. Do you want to know how everything works? Obviously, I am quite interested in getting to the bottom of many of these mysteries, or I wouldn't do investigations. I wouldn't do research. I wouldn't be trying to formulate my own ideas like you can talk to portals, because you can, by the way, and portals will talk back. But, there is, I don't know. And at what point do we just kind of get over the gatekeeping aspect of certain information regarding UFOs and disclosure and other paranormal stuff? Right? I don't know. People are like, this is my info. I am not big on that. If I have, I think everybody should be trying to talk to portals. It's not my thing. I'm sure people had been talking to portals long before I came around. Just because I hadn't heard anybody talk about how we should talk to portals doesn't mean that people weren't trying to talk to portals or talking to portals. It's not my thing. 3D mapping footprints on the Polycam app, as long as you have an iPhone 14 or above, so you can do 3D prints of the castings. We should all be doing that out in the woods when we come upon these footprints, right? It's not my thing. Other people have probably already tried to do it anyway before I even thought of it. So, I mean, wouldn't it be nice to have these 3D printed castings as opposed to these plaster ones that we have to worry about cracking constantly? I mean, that's just, we're doing it. We're actually trying to get something made right now from Florida, from the investigation that's ongoing down there. I haven't heard an update on that yet. Hopefully we'll have an update on that soon. But regarding this exact same thing, because I'm gonna tell you what, there was some footprints out there, and I'm gonna tell you something. Let me tell you this: there were some footprints, and there. Let me rephrase that so the skeptical-minded person might not, have a hissy fit. I don't even know where hissy fit comes from, or a conniption. I don't know where that one comes from either. But we have what we believe are footprints, and I have 3D imaging of these indentations on my phone. I don't even know what kind of file they are, but I do know this. A couple of us had the app on our phone, and so we got to using it and playing around with it, and boy, oh boy, is it fun. Oh, goodness gracious, is it fun to 3D map some stuff. Now, getting it printed, that's the rub. That's the rub. Okay? Okay, very good. Random book of symbols. Going to tie all this together. Thief, robber is the page I open to. What in the world? How is this going to tie in? So thief, robber. Thieves and robbers are outlaws and despoilers, reminding us of the light-handedness or much cruder violence by which the material and spiritual valuables of our being can get snatched away. They embody those autonomous, disruptive forces that break and enter when we imagine our defenses secure. Time, disease, death, and eros have been depicted as thieves. Talking about personification here again. Okay, I like that. So seriously do we regard the concrete act of stealing that those who do it have at times been punished by having their hands cut off or by being disgracefully executed. Jesus was said to have been crucified between two thieves, emphasizing his supposed arrogation of kingly status. The pickpocket and cat burglar, even more so masked gunmen, pirates, bandits, and highwaymen, violate us and violate our illusions of being, quote, in full possession. Yet perhaps because of the inherently ambiguous nature of ownership, symbolism treats the thief or robber with relativity. The sacred thief is part of countless myths of transgression and blessing where a culture, hero, god, animal, or inspired mortal moves between divine and human dimensions. Ooh, here we got moving between dimensions coming up again. They also subvert authority and redistributes the hoarded wealth. Lord Ganesha's vehicle, the cunning rat, a master thief, shows us how to slip through the locks of the granary to get to the life-giving substance. The Scandinavian dwarf Loki obsessively steals from the gods, upending divine hierarchy and reconfiguring what appears to be immutable. Hermes, the Greek trickster. Oh my God, it's Hermes. It's my guy Hermes. Hermes, the Greek trickster, guileful and deceptive, is patron of thieves. But really? God of both luck and loss. I love that Hermes is here when we're talking about being a Hermes boy earlier. God, it's all coming together. I never will doubt this, by the way. This methodology should never be doubted after even the first time. I never even had to have it be successful to know that I should never doubt it. Let's continue because I feel like I might get my mind blown even further. So we talked about Hermes here. In morally neutral divine play, he transmutes thievery as power and violence into thievery as hermetic inventiveness. Like the fire boring that wrested a secret from nature, the primordial appropriation of creativity is often depicted as an unlawful intervention that robbed the gods of something precious, the golden apples of the Hesperides, the golden bow of Diana's sacred grove, the herb of immortality, the spark of divine fire that Promethean theft planted in the soul of the individual. Theft has a part in psychic processes of division and synthesis. Eve's mythic theft from the forbidden tree of knowledge breaks up paradisal unconsciousness, making us knowing participants in the fruitful and painful tension of opposites. Krishna, the mischievous, butter-stealing divine child of Hindu religion, is also the ravishing lover and supreme being within, stealing his devotees' hearts and leaving them defenseless against spiritual union. In many fairy tales, theft is the only means of getting the treasure hard to obtain, the goal of the initiatory quest or opus of transformation. For instance, a hungry protagonist's theft of a golden pear from the royal garden brings the redeeming prince or princess into the action, guided by the signal loss. Often the ultimate treasure is guarded by the like of witch, magician, dragon, or serpent, with whose perilous energies the heroic thief is thrown into contention. Sometimes the task is beyond the capacity of the vulnerable seeker and requires help from the super-rational sphere embodied by the angel, wise old man or woman, and magical animal. To be sure, the motif of stealing by no means always comes down on the side of psychic gain. The thief whom the police do not catch has nonetheless robbed himself, and the murderer in his own executioner. Observe Carl Jung. Even worthy aspects of self requiring attention, if not paid it, will resort to stealing psychic libido, loss of soul felt in states of melancholy, distractedness, and inanition. I can't really see. Inanition. Sorry about that. That's a word I've never seen before. Inanition. In an alchemical text, a wicked thief, armed with the malignity of arsenic, represents more destructive forms of self-robbery, the ways we depreciate and betray the mysteries of the psyche, its winged possibilities and spirit of inner truth, which, portrayed as a shy and volatile youth, runs away, shuddering. Very cool. Very cool. Sphere popped up. I love that. See, what's fun about this, the Book of Symbols, and what's really enjoyable, at least for me, I hope for you as well, when we do a random draw and it turns out and Hermes pops up. I mean, Hermes doesn't pop up in all of this stuff, right? Now, Hermes is full disclosure. I admit and I understand Hermes is a star of the movie, of the archetypal movie that we're doing here. When it comes to who is a character that's in a bunch of scenes, has a lot of dialogue, other characters have conversations about, that's when you know someone is a lead in the story. Other secondary characters have conversations usually about that character as opposed to their own lives, right? Their own lives are being affected by the lead character. That's when you know someone's a lead. That's when you know they're one of the main players, right? So, for example, I just rewatched Hamlet, the Kenneth Branagh version, a little over 4 hours not too long ago. Everybody's talking about Hamlet the whole damn time. There's a bunch of other characters, but most of the conversation that they are having with one another is about Hamlet. He is the character. He's the titular character. The whole thing's named after him, right? So every other character is constantly talking about or referencing or alluding to Hamlet or Hamlet's activities or what they might do about Hamlet. That's probably a quintessential example now that I'm thinking about it. And that's without knowing all the other examples that could be used. So take that for what it's worth. Nonetheless, Hermes is a big time character in the archetypal play or movie or story. So Hermes will pop up more so than, let's say, let's say Cupid, right? Cupid is like a secondary character. Okay. And, they don't have to be from the same canon here. We're talking about archetypes. We're talking about personifications of energy. Cupid is definitely that, right? And we all know Cupid's bow and arrow. So it's a little more likely that Hermes shows up than others. But Hermes showed up, didn't he? Hermes showed up, and I love that. And what I also love, and what I was going to say, and I hope you also enjoy at the very least, if not also love, is that as we do these random book draws from the Book of Symbols, by the way, great gift from Dave Stone and Katie Strandberg, the Stonebergs. That's it. I was blanking on the name. The Stonebergs is their wonderful podcast, by the way. So make sure you check that out. But Dave was just texting me some crazy stuff about baseball today. He's a baseball maniac like me. I love it. So anyway, I also hope you enjoy that as we talk about and we read these archetypal entries for all these different things. Like so far we've done, I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, we've done sphere. I believe we've done, I know we've done sphere. I know we've done whale, and now we've done robber or thief and robber. And I'm sure there's another one we've done. Maybe, I think, did we do water? I can't remember. But, excuse me. I had a little bit of, I had a bubble. I had a sphere. I had an air sphere coming up, my vocal tubes. But we are starting to notice that there are real patterns. And of course there are. The book is about patterns, right? And the book is about how we have identified patterns and made characters out of these energetic patterns, these feeling patterns, these thoughtful patterns, that these invisible forces, right? All these invisible forces, whether they're thoughts, feelings, energies that have their own agency, these invisible forces have become personified since the beginning of us being able to even do that advanced kind of language technique to try to better understand and relate to, incorporate, and even in many cases, accept the existence of an invisible force. Personification is one of the most beautiful and wonderful ways that the human mind has figured out how to do that. And I think we are starting to see how they all are interconnected. And we're starting to see these patterns, and we're starting to maybe even better understand within the world of the paranormal. Oh, here we go. We've got next week, maybe. Although this one's probably going to do a lot of research. I wouldn't be doing it justice if I did it next week. You know how they say there are 7 stories in the world, right? And I'm not going to list those 7 stories because I'm not going to be able to list them off the top of my mind right now. I got a few seconds left. But it's my show. I can just extend. I could just move the music so you wouldn't hear right now, but I'm not going to do that. Anyway, there are, oh my God, I bet there's a great hall of archetypes that are paranormal specific. We got to get into those. We got to identify those, the archetypes of the paranormal. This is like a whole nother series. Am I right? Am I right? Aliens, ghosts, screaming baby ghosts, you know what I mean? Bigfoot, cryptid creatures, UFO. These are archetypes, right? And what do they represent specifically? People have gone into these individually. Let's do them all together. I love you. I hope you love yourself. I am going to move the music because I have to plug some tour dates. I will be in Mason City, Illinois this Saturday. Next weekend, Friday night, I will be at Hot Alien Summer Camp. You can probably still get tickets to go to that. That's just outside Nashville. The Friday after that, August 16th, I will be at Planet of the Tapes in Louisville, Kentucky. One of my favorite places to perform comedy. It's a magic. There are invisible forces in that club. If you're anywhere close to Louisville, Kentucky, please come out to the show at Planet of the Tapes. Right? All this stuff's on my website, and I should be linked. All the tour dates are on my website, and I should have links to their websites where you can get tickets. I tell you, it's like the only place in Kentucky that I perform. So if you're anywhere close to Louisville, it's your one chance to see me. That's all I do in Kentucky right now. So come out and see me. I would love that. And then Go Bananas Comedy Club, Labor Day weekend. I'll be in Wilmington, North Carolina before that. I'll be in Asheville, North Carolina before that. I love you. RyanSingerComedy.com/tour. It's got all the information. I hope to see you at a live show. I really, really do. Because it might be the last time, for at least for a little while, before I'll be going on tour. We'll talk more about that inflection point and decisions moving forward in the future. But just know this. Come see me now. It's not like by the way, I'm not retiring from stand-up comedy. That's never going to happen. But, this might be your last chance for a minute to be able to see me on the road while I try to figure out how I'm going to make some money. So, so I hope to see you. And if I don't, guess what? Don't worry. I'll see you at the watering hole. I'll see you at the watering hole in the astral plane. That's usually the last thing I say, but don't forget Paranonymous. I need volunteers. If you want to share your paranormal story, but don't want your name attached to it, Paranonymous is the new podcast I'm launching. That's going to be perfect for you. So I'll see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.